In my continuation of my revision of my American history notes, I'm just going to continue where I was last time, a couple of days ago. A manor is different. I'm still talking about Maryland. A manor is different than an ordinary landed estate in that the lord of the manor has judicial powers. He can hold court baron, or his servants can hold court leet to settle disputes between tenants and servants or to punish them for minor offenses. Maryland lords of the manor, like French seigneurs of Canada and the patroons of New Netherlands, had this privilege. Their grants were real manors. There were at least 62 manors granted to individuals and 30 more granted by the Lord Proprietor to himself during Maryland's first 50 years. For example, in St. Mary's County, Captain Thomas Cornwallis, who came over in the Ark, A-R-K, was granted 2,000-acre manors called St. Elizabeth Manor and Cornwallis Cross. The Reverend Robert Brooke was granted 4,100 acres called De la Brook and Brook Place. He was an Anglican clergyman who came over on his own ship in 1650 with his wife, 2 daughters, and 8 sons, 7 maidservants, and 21 manservants. The son he sent to Harvard College returned and was made famous by introducing the first pack of foxhounds to Maryland. I used to witness fox hunting on the eastern shore of Maryland myself as a child during the 1960s, complete with redcoats, horses, bugles, and hounds. I believe it was, I can't remember the name of the guy, but it was a guy who owned a big, huge chicken farm across the street from us on Stewart Neck Road. Anyway, Adkins, his name is Adkins, yeah. The Brook House and Cornwallis Cross were still standing in 1960s. Tobacco was king in Maryland as it was in Virginia, and doctor bills were even paid in tobacco in some areas into the 20th century in the more rural counties. Lord Baltimore kept an office in the city of London to handle people who wanted to emigrate, EM, to his colony. Many of them were from the servant class. Servants in the colonial era, you think in terms of maybe like it's like employee now, but they could be treated in a wide range of ways, totally different than what you consider an employee to be treated. There was a wide variation in their economic background and education as well as skills. Some servants would be treated so poorly they died early on, and some, like a slave. Some worked in the house or worked in situations that weren't so appalling. But in English, as well as Dutch colonies, the servant's passage was paid by an employer, and he or she was expected to work for a number of years, 4 or 5 as an adult or more as a minor. Some of those people, though, had to work so hard, they didn't survive their release. They were dead, so it might as well have been lifelong slavery. Upon release from the term of employment, the servant became a free man. An indentured servant was someone who had a contract with an employer called an indenture because originally it was torn in two along an irregular edge. The system of exchanging the cost of passage for a period of labor was the principal means of peopling the English colonies and even lasted for many years after they were independent. Now, servants in Maryland and other English colonies might be of any class, from the poorest of gentlemen to an ex-con. The average person was young and simply wished for a better life. My ancestor, Nicholas Stallings, came to Virginia as an indentured servant in the 1600s. My ancestors, Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Whittison, came from Plumtree, England with a baby and all the possessions they could carry on their backs in 1810, looking for a better life than the one they could have in England, but they weren't servants. The transporting of criminals and prisoners of war, begun by James I and continued through Cromwell and the rest of the Stuart kings, usually ending in the West Indies, but some went to Virginia, Maryland, and New England. Early on, a class of criminals existed in London who would engage in trepanning, or kidnapping boys and girls who were placed on a colony-bound ship and sold to masters in Virginia or Maryland. Maryland protested often for being the dumping ground of convicts, but Lord Baltimore found it profitable, so the practice continued. I'll talk about slavery separately in a separate sessions. But black slaves were slaves until baptized, until Maryland's Black Code of 1664, which made a slave for life simply by virtue of his or her color. A law of 1671 declared that neither baptism nor conversion affected a person's slave status. Slavery was extremely important in Maryland. until after 1700. But by the time of the Revolution, almost a third of the population was black and in bondage. So we'll talk more about this and talk about Lord Baltimore next some more. And I hope that you enjoy this and you'll click like and subscribe or follow. And feel free to make whatever comments you want to make. If you disagree with me or want to add something to what I've said, I look forward to seeing your citation so I can study it. Um, and Andy, I want to thank you for providing some things that you provided. Looking forward to reading more. Thank you.